it's parents themselves, like, we have to have a lot of compassion for ourselves, and we have to take a good look at ourselves and to be able to take care of ourselves, because this is an incredibly, incredibly hard job. And I think just the raising good humans comes from a place of deep compassion for parents, because it's so hard to be a parent. We have so little, you know, in the United States, we have very few resources directed at parents and very little support, and we're all on our own.
Hi, welcome back to Raising Men. Today on the podcast, we're joined by Hunter Clarke-Fields. She is the best-selling author of Raising Good Humans and Raising Good Humans Every Day, and she's a creator of the Mindful Mama podcast and Mindful Parenting training. Hunter's books bring clarity, wisdom, and real tactical tools that we can use right away. So let's jump right in. Hunter, welcome to Raising Men.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here, Shaun. I think this is
It's
such
it's
an
it's an
important.
honor to have you. I really, really appreciate you taking the time. So tell me, what is a good human to you?
That's a good question. I mean, when I think about that, what I want for my kids and what I want for other kids is I want them to feel comfortable in their own skin. I want them to feel secure and comfortable in their own skin, so that they can process their emotions, and they can go, make choices and go out into the world and do what they want to do. Kind, confident kids who are, a little aware of themselves, aware of others. But I want that feeling of just comfort in their own skin. That's kind of really what I'm going for when I think about a good human. Because then from that secure base of solidity and security, then they can just make all kinds of decisions about the world and how to be.
Yeah, you need a secure base to thrive. And, that's really what you want for your kids, right? You want them to thrive, maybe even more than you did.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, you do want it kind of more than you did, but I think that one of the interesting things about, parenting is that it always sort of points back to ourselves, like we have enormous influence on the sort of emotional weather in our household, in our kids, as far as like feelings and a sense of security and ease go. Those are things that we humans, we like we feel each other's feelings
Yeah.
very palpably. Even through Zoom, you and I are talking, we can you know without knowing whether I'm tense or whether I'm not tense, or all of those different things, and I can see the same about you. And so when you're in the same room, in the same household with your kids, they can feel that so much. So we want that for them. We want them to thrive so much, but it's important to realize that, like, the best parenting that we're ever doing is in modeling. So if we're shown, we can't just tell them how to be and hope for it for them. We have to live what we want our kids to learn. We have to show them how to do those different things. We have to model, right? I think that's
Yeah.
the most important thing, is that, you know, we all want our kids to be able to stop crying and calm down and regulate emotions and things like that, but they need to watch us do it. So for a lot of us, we need to sort of learn how to do it ourselves, because I
Absolutely.
mean, at least for me, I was taught, like, just don't cry and go to your room, basically don't have those feelings or whatever it is, right? And really we have to recognize that, um there's nature and there's nurture, and nature is really, really strong, and kids come in all kinds of genetic flavors, etc. But we do have enormous influence, and not so much in like what we're saying or doing, but like in who we are and how we are being.
Yeah. I have been blessed or cursed, depending on how you want to look at it, with a son who feels everything so deeply that I became aware at a pretty at an early age for him, that at how much my unregulation impacts him. So, for example, I take him to school in the mornings, and it's a 7-minute walk, but for me, it feels very important that we make absolute sure that we're not late. That was a triggering thing for me as a child. My mom was always dropping me off at school late, and then the kid gets punished when the parent is completely out of their control. It's horrible. And so I feel a great deal of anxiety in the mornings if we're not on time. And there'll be times where I will be like, "Come on, man, let's go. We gotta go. We gotta go." And I'll kind of get on him about that because of the anxiety that I'm feeling.
Mhm.
And it completely spins him off the rails.
Yeah.
And we've had situations where, in fact, and one of kind of my central principles about sending him to school is I will not send him to school when he's in a frenzy, when he's unregulated, because I'm going to get a phone call from the principal. It happens 90% of the time, and it's a negative experience for him. It's a negative experience for the school, for the other kids, everything. So what we'll do instead is just take a walk around the block. So it turns out that if I get all stressed out and unregulated and start pushing him to move faster and all of that stuff, number one, he's going to move slower. Number two, he's going to be unregulated, and then we're not even going to be able to go to school on time. We're going to have to walk around the block for 10 minutes. And
Yeah, it
so,
takes so much longer.
yeah,
I mean, that's the interesting there's all the communication skills and raising good humans and people push back against them like, "Oh, but that takes so much time." But it takes so much longer when everyone
yeah,
gets totally dysregulated and your kid is losing it and you're losing it. It takes way longer.
yeah, yeah. It's like you're driving a train, and the train, if you push the train too fast, it'll go off the rails. And then you got to get the train back on the rails somehow. It takes way longer than if you just slowed down by 10% and took the corner at a nice leisurely pace. You'd be fine and you'd be on your way.
Well, I'm glad you're saying that about yourself. I mean, I was like that. I was totally like that too. Like when my kid was 3 and 2, and we walked to a school too, actually, like a 5-minute walk away, and yeah, and time pressure was such a thing for me, and I think someone asked me yesterday in an interview, someone said, like, "What would what advice would you give your younger self?" And I would say, tell my younger self to kind of slow
Yeah.
down,
Settle down,
be
man. Yeah.
because yeah, it always makes everything worse when we get dysregulated, and that's not to say that we're gonna not be perfect. We're gonna yell, we're gonna lose our cool. That's definitely gonna happen for
Mhm.
everyone, even for people who are listening to parenting podcasts, right? Like, it's definitely gonna happen
Right.
for you, and that's okay, like, it's good, like, our kids don't need perfect parents. They don't need you to be perfect. In fact, it would be terrible for them if you were always perfect and regulated and, like, they never saw
They
a
never
human
got to
losing it
figure
and
out how
then
to deal
recovering.
with
Yeah, they wouldn't know
unregulated.
how to deal with anything, right? So, we need to be ourselves. We need to be imperfect. But yeah, like getting ourselves getting so anxious, ourselves, when we get anxious, when we get frustrated, when we yell, none of those things do help a situation.
Yeah.
They generally don't. Like yelling makes it so our kids go into fight, flight, or freeze. That cuts off, then their nervous system cuts off access to the slower parts of their brain, the prefrontal cortex area. They literally can't learn then anything you want them to learn in that moment
Yeah.
about what to do better. So it's not a skillful tactic, but it's something that one thing that was important for me to understand because I would feel that late pressure, and I felt a lot of anxiety when my kids were little, and I felt it was a lot of frustration, it was really difficult, and that brought out my temper, and I have a bad temper,
Yeah.
and what I had to learn about my own yelling um, was that, A, it's not my fault, like, it's not something I'm choosing. It's
Uh,
something that my own nervous system, my own fight, flight, or freeze system is activated and it sees my child as a threat. I never woke up in the morning and said, "Oh, I think I'm gonna, like, yell at Maggie at 7:30 on the way to school." Like, no, like, I never ever once did that. I never made
and
a
you never feel
conscious.
good about it after it was done.
No, you never feel good about it. No one's making a conscious decision. If you're listening to a parenting podcast, you have never once made a conscious decision to yell at your kid,
Right.
right? This is something that is a reaction, and it's unconscious reaction that's just happening without conscious thought. So it doesn't make sense to berate ourselves for it because you never consciously chose to do that.
Yeah.
But it is your responsibility.
Mhm.
So we can train our nervous system, our body minds to more skillful means bit by bit over time. Not that we'll ever be perfect, but we can train towards more skillful means, and it does help enormously because we gotta live what we want our kids to learn. We gotta show them how to do it, right?
You have this great story early in, Raising Good Humans where you talk about the absurdity of yelling at your kids to be quiet.
Yes.
And it's that illustrates it perfectly. I have almost never read, I mean, there's like 10 words that where you convey that story, and it's like, wow, that hit me straight in the eyes. Uh, uh, and it was so concisely and so well put. The metaphor that I like to use for that is, we have the 2 brains. We have the Conan the Barbarian brain, and we have the Sherlock Holmes brain. And the Conan the Barbarian brain is that fight or flight or freeze thing. And you actually do need that brain.
Oh,
If
yeah,
the
yeah.
oncoming car is coming,
Help
it's a good
the
thing.
parent arm come out.
Yeah,
Yes.
the parent arm. Yeah, that's what controls the parent arm. But the vast majority of the time, when you want to drop into that brain, it's not the right thing. You want to stay in Sherlock Holmes' brain because that's where you have access to the learning, the additional context, all of the other stuff. And if you're in, if you drop down to Conan the Barbarian brain, then it's just pure. Potentially, it's pure chaos. And the same
Shaun,
is
I think
true.
this might be explaining why me and my dad, who I got my temper from, had, like, an obsession with Conan the Barbarian when when
Is
I was
that right?
little.
How funny. Yeah, that was a surprisingly great movie.
Red Sonja.
It
Mm.
was a surprisingly great, and in fact, Arnold Schwarzenegger he's written a book,
Oh,
um, called, and now I'm drawing a blank on what it's called, Be Useful, and it's spectacular. It talks, I mean, it points out one of those absurdities, like yelling at your kids to be quiet. It's he's, grew up in rural Austria and decided that he was gonna become a leading man in movies in the US, and then set about to make that happen. And you think about the absurdity of that goal. I mean,
mhm.
imagine being 16 with him and he tells you this goal. You would make fun of him for it. And yet, look what he did. He did it. And the book is really, really good.
Go Conan.
Yeah. Um, yeah, there are a zillion parenting books out there. What makes Raising Good Humans special?
It's funny because when I wrote it, I was like, "Oh, I'll be so happy if, like, I sell 3,000 copies," and,
Yeah.
like, that
And
would
here we
be
are
great.
750,000 copies later.
It's crazy.
I know.
It really surprised me. And I've thought about that, and I think, of course, I've had, like, some amazing luck as far as that goes, because nobody who's made it really done some big things doesn't have a good dose of luck, so I do
Yeah.
wanna acknowledge that, but, like, I think it's because this is something I felt like I was really bad at. I was struggling in. I was I I share very honestly my struggles and my failures, and then I was like, and I was in a place of desperately wanting to know, like, people would all these parenting coaches would say, "Well, you have to, like, pause before you respond." I'd be like, "But how? How do you pause?" And I really, really wanted to know how to do these things, and I guess what I bring to the table is that, like, at the time, there was a lot of advice, great advice about how to be skillful with your kids,
Yeah.
but I couldn't implement any of it when I was activated, when I was dysregulated, and anxious, trying to do my best for this kid, and I had a temper, and I'm highly sensitive like your son, right? So I had
Yeah.
all these things, and it would all go out the window as soon as my stress response was activated. So I think it's to me, it's like, it's some of the best ideas are the ones where you're like, "Oh, duh, of course," right? Like, of course, we can't w make a choice about how to respond until we can regulate ourselves,
Right.
of course, we can't do those things, and and there are ways to do it, and I had started to study Buddhism and mindfulness as a teenager. And so I realized like, oh, this tradition, this and all this research backs it up, has all these ways to regulate ourselves, to be more peaceful, to be more steady, to be like the calm mountain that our kids need us to be.
Yeah.
Right? They need that really desperately. And I really wasn't that, and I had bits of that, but, like, I was able to sort of cultivate that a real steadiness in me without changing who I am, was becoming more of who I am, but, um but yeah, to recognize that, you know, it's parents themselves, like, we have to have a lot of compassion for ourselves, and we have to take a good look at ourselves and to be able to take care of ourselves, because this is an incredibly, incredibly hard job, and I think just the raising good humans comes from a place of deep compassion for parents, because it's so hard to be a parent. We have so little, you know in the United States, we have very few resources directed at parents and very little support, and we're all on our own.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Yeah, and
So
we've
I think
lost
it's
a lot of the institutions. There's not as the families aren't as big, and the grandparents aren't around anymore, and the cousins aren't
Mhm.
there, and
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, no aunties to tag off with if you're a single parent, my god. Like, if
Oh,
you have 2 parents in the household, like, you're like, "Oh gosh, thank goodness I have another person there some of the hours of the day to tag off for," but, that it really humans should be we should have, like, 10 other people that we could tag off for, because think
absolutely.
how regulated we would be. Think
Yeah.
how steady, the kids could have this such a steadying influence, and I think that would be really, really healthy for us to have that, for kids to have lots of different attachment figures, and then parents could have space to breathe, because it's so intensive when kids are little. Like, humans take a lot of intensive care. I mean, a giraffe baby plops down 4 feet, falls is born, falls out of the sky 4 feet to the ground, and then stands up and walks around. That's like, what, like, the equivalent of, like, a seven-year-old maybe
Right.
human? Like, it's just like we're you know, it's very intensive for us.
Yeah. No, that is so true. Part of what strikes me about raising good humans is and what makes it unique for me is how authentic it is. It comes from your own personal journey and how tactical it is. And like these are the specific tactics that I'm using for my I get really mad all the time and I needed to kill that monster and here's how I did it. Is
Mhm.
basically the story of the book as far as I
I
can see.
tamed the monster. I mean, it's still there,
Yeah,
but yeah.
right. Okay, that's fair. Yeah, tame the monster.
But it's amazing, like, with practice, I think that's the thing that's really important and key, is that, like, these are things that we can practice and train. Like, we have this
Yeah,
neuroplasticity, we can train our brains, we can, bushwhack a new path through woods of our brain. But yeah, like, and we can train our brain, so then even, like, at some point when my second daughter was, like, 9 years old, so this is, like, 10 years after I'd started to practice all these things and started to learn, and at one point we had all watched a movie, and we had movie night, and then she was supposed to go to bed. She was 9, so she could go put herself to bed and get
yeah.
ready, and I was like, she was being nudgy, so I was like, "I'm gonna just read my book and ignore her, and she's gonna just go to bed. Oh, she's being nudgy." And then from the stairwell, she said something, and she, like, laughed at me, and it was like, like, it was like this. I was this whole new trigger that came out, like, I was just, like, from 0 to, 100 in, like,
I've
a
been there.
a second, right?
Yeah.
I was so angry all of a sudden because she had been nudging and nudging. And I stood up and I was so actually in retrospect, I was quite proud of myself because I stood up and I yelled, but I yelled, "I am so angry right now." And then I opened the door and I threw my poor library book down onto the carport and I walked up and down the street for 10 minutes until I calmed down. But I was so proud of myself for yelling something skillful
Yeah.
rather than like, "You, what's wrong with you?" etc. No blaming and shaming language. I yelled an iMessage. I'm so angry. And I was really proud of that moment.
That is, yeah, I think that encapsulates the skill right now. I mean, you're gonna feel angry. That's fine. The skill is in handling it in a way that enhances your relationship with your kid and as opposed to ruins it.
Yeah.
Ruins it. It damages it.
Damage. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I could feel the damage happening with my oldest child when she was little, and I was really
Yeah.
scared, It really
Yeah,
scared
and
me.
you kinda had to give yourself the grace of understanding that, okay, mistakes were made, that's okay, and then you move on.
Yeah, exactly. And also I think it's so important to understand that you can always, always begin anew. You can always,
Mhm.
always start and practice and heal things. It's so fascinating. Yeah, I taught mindful parenting to a low income community in Wilmington, Delaware, and a grandmother was there because she was taking care of her 6-year old grandchild. And at the end, she shared, yes, things are going better with the 6-year old, but she shared with me that she healed her relationship with her adult daughter, which was
Wow.
so I mean, it just made me feel amazing, but for like in my own circumstances, I remember thinking, "Oh, I can see in my daughter," my oldest daughter got the worst of me. And I could see these, I saw her like bark orders at her younger sister and I was like, "Oh god, oh,
Yeah.
that's what I sound like. Oh no." And I used to think, "Oh, they say the first 3 years are so vital for your development and maybe I would just worry that maybe I really screwed up my kid even though I've done a lot of changing and growing and I've really really learned and practiced some skillful means and but anyway, I would worry that from time to time over the years when I would just she's kind of an intense kid and seeing her kind of intense reactions and snappy reactions sometime with other people but then and I worried that like she was a little not compassionate with others because
Mhm.
I was snappy because I was stressed and not so compassionate, I think, with her sometimes when she was little,
Yeah.
and I would worry about that, but then there was this time when she was maybe 14 or 15 and we had a dog then and I had had a scary incident where the dog met another dog out on our street and there was barking and there's growling and it really scared me and I was really upset and I came inside and I was like talking about the dog and I was really upset and my younger daughter who's normally she's like very sort of intuitively compassionate
Mhm.
and she was kind of like getting upset at me and defending the dogs, and I was just like and really upset, and my older daughter said to my younger daughter, you know, "Can't you see that mom is upset right now?" And she said to me, "Mom, do you need a hug?" And I was like, "Yes. Yes, I do need a hug." And she came over and gave me a hug, and I was like, "Oh, I didn't ruin my child
Oh
too."
my gosh,
I
that's
was like, "I'm
beautiful.
not only I'm getting a hug, but I also didn't ruin my child." So
Yeah. And then yeah. Children are very resilient if you allow them to be. And you don't wanna rely on it too much, but it you can give yourself the grace that there is no specific incident pretty much that will
Mm.
have ruined them for life, and that it really is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yes,
And,
yes.
I could think of a handful of things in my childhood that really impacted the way that I look at the world, but they were examples of a trend, right?
Mm,
They were just kind of emblematic situations that the touchstones about a more generalized trend. And, And so, without that generalized trend, those those specific events would not have had the significance that they do.
Yeah, there's a pattern.
Yeah.
And I think that we can also, you know, we know that, yeah, we're going to be human. We're going to mess up. There's going to be damage and conflict. That will happen.
Yeah.
That happens. Conflict happens in families every day, all the time. And
Right.
that's normal. And of course, but we can, um, that repair is so, so important. And it really goes a long way. And, just of course us saying I'm sorry to our kids. And I had I had a couple, I had moments when I apologized to young Maggie when she was like 6 years old for
Yeah.
my yelling in the past. And I, cried and cried and just I apologized to her. And it was for me impactful, um, of course, to do that. But yeah, and then someone asked me actually a little while ago, um, thinking about, I have my temper because my father has an intense temper. He's an highly sensitive person raised in a generation that, of course, where things
Absolutely.
that we would call abuse were normal then,
Yeah.
um, and so I used to be very scared of him at times. He was also very like affectionate as well. He was like I
Yeah.
could definitely rely on him to be very affectionate and cheerleader, but also he scared me sometimes. And I remember someone asked me recently, like, "Oh, what if your father, like apologized to you?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh my God. Wow." I mean, it was such a shocking idea. Like it was so hard to imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It was so hard to imagine, but I could see that it would make such a profound impact.
On him too,
Even
probably.
yeah, on as a grown adult woman, like, with almost grown children now, like, it would make a real profound impact even now. So I think
Yeah.
it's just to say it's never too late to practice skillful means and to heal those relationships.
You almost, I mean, certainly unintentionally, did a natural experiment with your 2 kids,
Hmm.
where the first one got the full brunt, of the old Hunter, and then the second one got a lot more of the new, improved, mindful Hunter,
More
right?
relaxed, yeah.
What differences have you noticed about the way that they are or the way that your experience was raising them? What were the different outcomes that you've gotten as a result of that experiment?
I mean, well, they're very different people, so, who's to
Right,
say
and so, yeah,
what
the variables
right.
aren't isolated. You can't
Yeah.
assign a causation.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think though my younger daughter, I mean, she is more she has been kind of naturally a little bit more emotionally aware, a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more in tune with things. She was also just, like, an easier baby, and I'm not sure
Yeah.
if, like, my first child probably got more anxiety hormones in the womb,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I was more anxious with the first one. So there's no way to sort of tease apart anything, but, yeah, she did get and she was more open to, me talking to her about all
right,
kinds of things, like all those awkward conversations you have to have about sexuality and all those
right.
kind of things. She was more open to those conversations and is a little more open to some of those things. We can talk. And actually she and I yeah, I don't know, we get along very well. I mean, I love both my daughters enormously, but yeah, the youngest one uh is, I travel well with her, like, we
Yeah,
take care of each other well. I don't know, she's a very cool, balanced person, and, I think she benefited from a more relaxed parent for sure.
yeah. Interesting. In keeping with the sense about the tactical nature of your book, I want to talk about. I'll tell you a story of something that happened with me and my son, and I would love to get your feedback
Sure.
on how I handled it and what I should have done how I should have thought about this and what I should have done differently. Um, my son, when he was 3.5, was terrified of escalators. He he spent his entire life not being terrified of anything. He used to jump in the deep end of the pool even though he couldn't swim. And then he developed this fear of escalators for no reason. Just all of a sudden was terrified to go down escalators. We would have to use elevators anywhere we went. And this irritated me. It felt like it actually, frankly, it was a trigger for me because I felt like I was a failure as a father because he wasn't tough enough to go down the escalator. He's 3.5 years old, and it felt like he was just being a weak. It felt like he was being weak. And I wanted to teach him that no, we overcome our fears and we do this. And I felt like it was an opportunity to do that. Now, and I was pretty, I didn't ever force him to go down an escalator. I didn't mess with him in that way. But I felt this urge to want to impart this lesson to him. And we went to Target one day, and he had allowance. He had $11, and he
Oh,
wanted
wow.
to spend it on toys at Target. And the toy section of Target in the Target that we went to is upstairs, and there's an escalator. He could go up the escalator just fine, but he just couldn't go down. So we went to the Target, and we grabbed so he wanted to buy um a set of Hot Wheels cars, and you get 5 Hot Wheels cars for $6. So he could afford, since he had $11, he could afford 1 pack of Hot Wheels cars, but they were running a special. And the special was if you buy 2 packs of Hot Wheels cars, you get a third one for free.
Oh my gosh, and he was so close.
He was so close, $1 away. And so I told him, I said, "Listen, if you're willing to go down the escalator, I'll make you a deal. I'll give you the extra dollar, and you'd be able to buy 3 packs instead of just 1. Do you
Oh.
want the deal?" And he goes, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. I want the deal. I want the deal." So we got the 3 packs of Hot Wheels cars, and we approached the escalator. And I said, "Listen," we were approaching the escalator. I said, "Listen, I'm here for you. Whatever you need to succeed on going down the escalator, I will do for you. You need me to pick you up. You want me to blindfold you. You want me to just carry you down. You want me to force you down. You want me to stay away. Whatever you need." He goes, "Okay, okay. Just hold my hand." And so I held his hand, and we approached the escalator, and we got one step away. I stepped on the escalator, and he says, "Pause, pause." And he whipped his hand out from under mine, and I start going down the escalator, and he freaks out. And so I run back up, and he has a total meltdown. It lasts 45 minutes. He's screaming, he's crying, he's like freaked out. And at some point, 30 minutes into it, I'm like, I'm the worst parent in the world. I can't
Oh.
believe I've done this. I'm so sorry. Like, let's just forget the deal, man. Let's forget the deal. And he goes, "No, I want the deal. I want the deal." And we finally got him regulated again. We came up with an approach. We decided we were, okay, I'm going to hold his hand, and we're just going to walk really, really fast. And he's going to close his eyes. And same exact thing happened. We got to the top of the escalator, and he goes, "Pause, pause." But it was too late by then. He was stepping on the escalator, and I just pulled him on, and I held him tight. And he started like freaking out a little bit. And then about a third of the way down the escalator, he relaxed, and he
Mm.
started getting happy. He started realizing, okay, I'm going to get my thing, and this isn't so bad. And he felt this elation at the end of it. He was thrilled that he succeeded. He went home and he told his mom, and he got, his extra 10 cars, and he was really, really happy. But the whole point was to get him not to be scared of going down escalators, and it
And
didn't work.
yeah, what happened the next
He
escalator?
was terrified of escalators for another year and a half. It made the fear worse, and then it just went away all by itself.
Yeah. Huh. Huh.
And I don't
Oh,
know,
man.
I I can see a lot of things I did right in
Yeah.
that situation. I feel like my mind, my heart was in the right place.
Mhm.
I feel like I shouldn't have impugned this sense of like weakness about this thing on him. But okay, I feel like I was right to try and teach him the lesson. but I feel like overall it was a mistake, and I feel like I should have done something different. And in fact, I think
Um,
if I just would have left it alone, 2 months later, he would have not been as scared of escalators, and it would have been fine.
oh, I feel for you because, yeah, I that's such an understandable impulse, right? You want him to be I would have wanted my daughters to be strong and to get over the escalator thing. Absolutely, yes. I can completely relate to that feeling of wanting to have your kid get over this thing, and it's so hard, like, to accept that we don't have in control over their stuff, right?
Right.
Like, it's not on our timetable, like, we're not gonna make them read when we want them to read, we're not gonna make them, you know what I mean? There's, like, all these things that we can't, that it's doesn't it really, like, us interfering with doesn't really do a lot with. Um, so I can relate to that wanting to do that. Yeah, I think, when we start to use things like, when we try to manipulate our kids with things like bribery
Yeah.
or, honestly, like, punishment and reward are 2 sides of the same coin,
Mm,
that then kids do feel coerced, right? Like
interesting.
they feel that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, when you slow down when you're speeding on the highway and you notice there's a cop ahead and you slow down when there's a cop there, but then you're back up to 65 or 70 after, a
Yeah.
minute or two. Right? Like it's doesn't there's no intrinsic you have no intrinsic motivation to not speed. You're just not speeding not to get caught.
Mhm. Mhm.
And similar with, like, reward. So, when you're working with things that are extrinsic motivators like rewards, or bribes or things like that, there's no intrinsic that the child has no intrinsic reason to wanna change this thing. They're just trying to get this extrinsic reward. And that's not, like, the most quality change if you manipulate the behavior in some
Yeah.
way. It's
Yeah.
not really coming from the inside out, right? It's coming from
Yeah.
the outside in. And so it's not a great way to learn a lesson or to make change, honestly, if you don't hit your brother or I'm going to take this thing away from you. You really want your kid to learn, like, don't hit your brother because hitting hurts people
Yeah,
and there are better
we don't
ways
hurt
to
people
solve
in this
problems,
family.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's not
Yeah,
who we
yeah.
are. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you really wanted him to learn to do the escalator so that he could just do it, and it's
Yeah.
fun, and it's easier than getting on the elevator, or sometimes it's really hard to find the whatever, all the
Yeah,
different
when
ways.
I didn't want him to be limited by fears, right?
Yes.
Like it's an irrational fear, recognize it as such and, push through it.
Yeah. Yeah, but he wasn't ready to
No,
do
and
that
that's
yet.
a skill I wanted to impart to him, but, he's 3.5.
Yeah, 3.5. I guess I would have invited you kind of at that time to say, like, you know, why do you feel like, to turn the attention back to yourself,
Mm,
why do you feel so strongly about this?
mhm.
What is to explore, like, what is your own fear and to kind of carry your own baggage, right?
Yeah,
In a way, you have some baggage and you were like, "Here, son, take my
take my
baggage."
bags. Yeah,
You
yeah,
hold the baggage,
right.
rather than carrying it yourself,
Yeah,
right? You had some stuff going on around that, but you projected it all onto your kid, and rather than wait for him and his timetable, um,
yeah. I love that
yeah,
analysis. I think that's exactly right. It's something that overall, I think it was successful, and, I mean, he really did have a feeling of elation, but I felt this vague sense that I've done some things wrong there, and it's a really, really good lesson.
it's funny because we have to walk a middle path,
Mhm.
like, there's some people who, like, there's some people who, we have to use our power sometimes, right, as parents, like,
Yeah.
all in all, like, as you get to the ends of Raising Good Humans, which you haven't gotten to yet, but, like, that part, like, there's a whole part about the use of power, and
Mm,
the more we use power, there's an inverse relationship between power and influence, and I
yeah,
believe that one of the reasons why we have this trope of, like, the rebellious teenager and the teenager that hates you is because teenagers are not rebelling against their parents, they're rebelling against the unskillful use of power that parents have used for many, many, many years, and they've disciplined in a way that builds resentment to teenagers by using power,
I think that's exactly right.
using punishments and things like that. So using the power of you can't have the iPad or you can't have the
Yeah.
car or I was grounded, different things like that. And so teenagers will resent parents at that point. And then also teenagers then have a lot of their own power so they can call a friend to pick them up and then they're out of
Mhm.
there, right? So
Alright.
but if we can use less power and use our influence more, use more of that intrinsic
Yeah.
motivation, then we have a beautiful bunch of influence left when our kids are teenagers. And this is this is a really important conversation because it is very true that when you have bigger kids, you have bigger problems,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's less intensive hour to hour, but bigger kids have bigger problems. So you do want to be there and be an influence in their life. Um, but it's not like the messy middle. Like it's
Yeah.
not like you're never going to use power. Like I remember holding my daughter down so that I could put that car seat on her, you know?
Right.
And
Or take the
I'm like,
medicine or yeah, I
I'm
mean,
sorry.
yeah.
I have to hold you down. Like you're screaming and your body is bucking, but we can't drive this car unless you're in the car seat. And I remember reading a story of a parent who was so dedicated to gentle parenting
Hmm.
that they said, "Okay, you don't have to walk in the car seat." And the kid walked along on this like side of the road with one parent while one parent drove along slowly. Like, I'm sorry, I just don't have the patience for that. Like, and that's a little crazy if you
Yeah.
ask me. Like, it's just a little
Totally,
crazy
totally agree.
to say
Yeah,
that
and I
a
mean,
kid
it's not sustainable,
that's not
so
sustainable. That they don't have they shouldn't really have that much power, right? Like we want to, of
right.
course, respect our kids' bodily autonomy and we want to teach them all those lessons and things like that. But at the same time, like when your son came on the escalator that second time and you just held him there, like that was probably the right choice. Like help
Yeah.
him get over it. It's like kind of like helping them get in the pool, right? Like you're using some of your power and your, to kind of make the like let's get through this situation.
Yeah.
And so it's not like that's one of the, I think the things about that we have to recognize is that we can use more and more skillful means and we should learn like more and more skillful means and like we got to cut ourselves some slack. It's going to be messy and it's going to be like there's going to be some awkward uncertain moments and you're going to be like, "Oh, I should have done this differently." And you might even say to your son, "Hey buddy, you know what? That time where I did this thing with the Hot Wheels and I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
we
shouldn't
talk
have
about it a
done
lot.
that." You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do that, right?
Yeah.
So it's gonna be messy and it's not completely, I think it's dangerous to go to the extremes and say it should always be of course, like the do as I say because I say it. That
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense, and that's unskillful, and that doesn't teach your kids good lessons, right? But also the complete opposite
Yeah.
is also unskillful, right? So, but there's a path, there's a middle path, and it is a little messy, but that's where we want to walk.
If there's one thing that I've learned through this entire journey is that there is always a tension. So if you ever find yourself thinking, "Oh, no, it's always X," you're 100% wrong. You
Yeah,
will you need to find the tension and you need to figure out where that middle is.
yeah, absolutely, yeah,
So I always like to finish up these conversations by asking more or less the same question of everybody. And the question is, what is one guiding principle that you believe that parents should hold on to as they raise their children in our culture today?
hmm. That's a there's it's sort of a weighty question. One
It
guiding
is, it
principle.
is. And there's again, there's a tension.
Yeah,
There's a real value in like, okay, what comes to mind right then? But then there's also you also want to be deep and meaningful and all of that. So
I guess
take
I would
however much
say
time you need.
I think I would say too that, you know, my invitation for a principal would be to invite people to slow down
Mm.
and to give yourself some space to make choices and give your kids space I think we get so sped up, like we fill every second with like seeing if we've gotten a text message or whatever it is. And we got all our activities and our schedules, and we're going so fast, and we're on all the teams and things like that. I guess I would invite people to slow down and protect childhood, protect kids, ability to be bored and to play freely without adults
Yeah,
guiding them, and to just sort of slow it down and protect childhood, and slow yourself down so that you can appreciate where you are.
big time. I love that sentiment. Hunter, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. This is Hunter Clarke-Fields. Again, she's the best-selling author of Raising Good Humans and Raising Good Humans Every Day, the Mindful Mama podcast, and a Mindful Parent training. All of the links for those things are in the show notes. This has been Raising Men, and you are a great parent. Raising Men is produced by Phil Hernandez. This episode was edited by Ralph Tolentino.